Welcome, wargamers and hobbyists, to day 2 of my progress with painting a Galadhrim army as part of the 2-week challenge that myself, Chris, Josh Triffitt, and Alistair King have entered. This is just an excuse, really, to paint up armies that we've had lying around for ages and haven't done anything with. So it's been a really good opportunity to get some old school models out. In my case, the Helm's Deep Defenders. You can see they're all Haldir's elves, the old metal ones, including the banner bearer, and Haldir himself is what I've picked to start off with. Very quickly, I'm just going to go through what I've got up to today. I've put in about 4 hours so far of work onto just the base coats on these guys. Might not look like a lot, but that's actually quite a lot of painting for me, especially at the speed that I managed to do it. I am a fairly slow painter, especially when doing base coats, because I try to be as neat as possible, because I found that this works for me in terms of the less messy I am to begin with, the easier the work is later on. And, you know, it's just, obviously if you do make a mistake, you can just go back with another brush and cover it up. That's absolutely fine. I have to do that, and often have stages where I do bits of tidying up as well. But I try to be neat at the start because it just saves me a lot of time later on. Before I go through the models, a few little bits and pieces. Citadel painting handle. Was slightly sceptical before buying one of these as to whether I'd get much use out of it, but it's really comfortable, really good for holding onto a model while you're trying to paint it. Gives you a nice steady grip. You can rest both hands against it. Gives you a very steady grip when you're trying to paint. Little tricks if you don't have particularly steady hands. When you are trying to paint, brace your hands on the table, or brace your elbows on the table, and hold those hands together so that you've got a nice controlled platform from which to paint from. Obviously, when you paint, make sure you're in a good posture anyway, because if you're not, you're just eventually going to ruin your back. So do make sure that you're sitting in a comfortable position when you start painting. Next up, the piece of tissue that I've been working on today. This is partly because every time I mix up paint and then apply it to the model, it's really easy to put way too much paint on the brush. So I'm in the habit of, every time I dip my brush into the paint, just scraping a little bit onto the tissue paper, and that gives you a nice firm point to use again. On my brushes themselves, I've got two that I've used for the project so far. One looks like it's been through the wars, and the other looks brand new. They're both similar size. I think one is the beaten up one is the Citadel starter brush, and the other one is just a Citadel standard size. I've had them for ages. The reason one looks beaten up is basically because it does all of the heavy work. It applies all of the base coats, and it mixes up all of my paints when they're on the palette. Doing that to the brush does contribute some wear and tear to it, and at some point I am going to have to replace it. The other one is pristine because all it's ever used for is applying some of the finer details. So, you know, things like having to paint straight lines in between different areas, that kind of thing. I use it for when I really need to get the paint in just the right position, whereas the other one is just used for slapping paint onto models quickly. I have my wet palette as well. As you can see, this is a very high-tech piece of equipment. This is the container that you get things like pasta in, fresh pasta to cook at home. Yeah, really cheap to get hold of, provided you like Italian food. Underneath, you can just about see that is a layer of sponge that is just wetted with tap water, and over the top is just a thin layer of grease-proof paper. Definitely recommend, if you haven't tried one before, try using a wet palette. First of all, it's good to always add water to your paints to thin them down. But second of all, the wet palette keeps the paint wet and fresh for longer. And I find that the amount of time it saves amazing, because it just means that you don't have to keep going back to the pot to get fresh paint out, and that you can have, you know, most of the batches that I've done, I may have run out of paint or had some of the paint dry up a little bit in between, but honestly, usually once I've mixed the paint once, that's pretty much enough to get through the entire batch. Onto the models themselves. Might not look like I've done a terrible amount, especially if you look at them from the back, where you've got all those cloaks and helmets and bows and stuff completely untouched. But I'm quite happy with today's progress. This is relatively fast for me. So what I've mostly done for the basic elf, I don't know how well you can see it in the lighting here, especially when my hand is hovering over the top, covering all the light. Let's try if I hold it that way. So you can just see that I've painted the bottom layer of mail. That has been a mixture of... I've only used the 3 paints that you can see in the background there. Those are Macarite Red, Rhinox Hide and Shining Gold. There are modern equivalents to them, and there's a Citadel conversion chart that you can look up to get an idea of what those are. So the gold on the mail there is a mix of one-to-one mix of Shining Gold and Scorched Brown or Rhinox Hide, as it's now known. The centre robes are 4 parts Rhinox Hide to 1 part Scorched Brown, and if you can just see, just under the arms there, is a thin band of red, which is just Macarite Red mixed again with Rhinox Hide. And that's been just following the original White Dwarf painting guide. I knew there was a White Dwarf painting guide out there for these guys. I don't have access to my own White Dwarf collection, which I've kept buried in an archive in my family home somewhere. These are, the guide that I was after. I scoured the internet for, trying to find a PDF version of it, but couldn't. In the end, I randomly asked a bunch of my friends if they had any old White Dwarfs lying around, and it just happened that one of my good friends, a chap called Mark Boyland, who's also a pretty good painter himself, had 1 White Dwarf left over from when he threw away his entire collection. He kept it because it was the first one he ever bought, and because he loved the articles that were in there, and one of those articles was how to paint Haldir's elves. So he sent that over to me via his phone, and I have been following the guide pretty much as closely as possible using whichever paints I've got. So that's pretty much as far as I've got on all of the basic warriors. Haldir has gone 1 step further in that he has had his cloak painted. I'm quite happy with how that turned out. The actual guide itself says to just cover it in scab red, and to do 4 layers to get it to cover over a chaos black undercoat. I haven't had to do that. That is 1 coat of paint there in front of you, and the reason I haven't had to do that is twofold. First of all, I'm painting on a zenithal base coat, which means that I don't have to fight against the really overpowering black that would normally be the predominant colour on the model. So the red's gone on quite easily thanks to all the white and grey already on the Mini. The second bit is that this is an old foundation paint. I found that even when you water these down, they still have a really nice strong pigment. I don't know if there's a modern equivalent for them. I've had that in my painting case for God knows how many years now, and it's my go-to tool if I'm trying to paint a red. Even if I'm trying to paint a red that will end up even brighter than this, I'd still be tempted to mix just a bit of that in because it forms such a strong pigment and just helps it go onto the model nice and easily. I'm going to be in trouble when I run out of that. There's not much of it left. So that's about as far as I've managed to get to today. I'm fairly happy with the progress. It's pretty fast for me. There's still plenty to do, as you can see from all the grey and white areas that are still there. But yeah, definitely getting there. Feel like today's been a good day for painting. I'll hopefully have another video for you soon, and hopefully that will have covered the rest of the base coats, or if not, have certainly gotten a lot closer to having finished base coated minis. I am going to try and get these guys to have a layer of highlighting and possibly washes as well, depending on how strong those highlights look on the zenithal base coat once I'm done. Highlighting is I find a bit more challenging, but hey, the thing about pursuing a hobby is to learn and strive and to get better, and for every model that you muck up, you learn something new about how to do it right for the next time. I'm really happy with the way that Haldir's cloak came out there. I wasn't really expecting that. All I've really done there to get that effect is I've painted all of the red on the raised areas and just left a little bit of the dark in the shadows showing. Ordinarily, you could do that as a base coat, just cover the whole thing, and then you could add the shadows with a wash, or by going in with a watered down Chaos Black, or Abaddon Black as it's now known. There are a couple of areas where I might just have to put my brush in just to strengthen that darkness in the shadows, or maybe I've gone a bit too thick with the red. Not sure how well you can see that, but yeah. As a first effort, I am pretty excited and pretty happy with that. Anyway, that's it from me today. Let me know if you've got your own secret recipe for painting up these guys. Let me know if there's anything that you know about the technique needed to push these guys even further. Definitely let me know if you know any good tricks to highlighting, because it's still my bane. And yeah, I hope that you are enjoying watching. I hope that you're working on something yourself at home. If you do have anything that you're working on at home, either put pictures of it up on Facebook in the GBHL or EAHC groups under the posts that we put up today with these with these logs, or feel free to put your comments and pictures in the comments below on this video. Anyway, hope you're having fun hobbying, and yeah, we'll see you soon. Catch you later.